Welcome back for blog 3 in our series, Square Peg, Round Hole, where we're talking about trying to fit an old way of doing English language development into new expectations for curriculum. I'm Kelly Ryder, and I'm walking you through this mind shift with me to challenge you to think about things in a different way. If you missed part 1 and part 2, go ahead and click to go backwards and check those out and come on back to blog 3 so you get the full picture of where we've been and can come with us where we're going. As I was saying in blog 1 and in blog 2, it is in my full heart and professional opinion and experience that I can say that systemic functional linguistics is a better fit for today's expectations. We are seeing more and more English language development teachers pushing into the content classrooms and co-teaching or parallel teaching, side-by-side teaching, all the things of collaborating together. We do still have pockets of pull-out instruction, mostly for newcomers and beginners, but even still, we can avoid a lot of the conflict that's happening if we shift our mindset to a systemic functional linguistics approach. The demise of doorknob planning. So doorknob planning is something that I want to experience the demise of. Let me give you a scenario, and I'm sure you can relate. So doorknob planning, this term was coined, I'm not going to give a year. In my early years of teaching, in my first experiences of working in a school where we had traditionally done pull-out instruction, at me as the ELD teacher and our team of ELD teachers. And then as the program was shifting, like we see every day now, the principal said, this doesn't make sense anymore. You're pulling more students out than are in the classroom. We are going to start using a push-in model. Very willing. Made sense to me. The logistics were crazy, trying to find spaces. We had 10 full-time ELD teachers in the building at that time, and I can tell you this was the mid-90s, right? At that time, we had a school with that large of a population, and it didn't make sense anymore. There wasn't time, and it was disjointed, and we never knew what was going on in the classroom, so the students stayed confused because the classroom teacher wasn't sure what to do with the language, and those of us who knew what to do with the language didn't know what they needed for content. And we worked with multiple teachers, like most push-in ELT teachers do. So the term doorknob planning was coined because in the beginning years, as we were trying to figure this out, we did not have any co-planning time. We had occasional grade level meetings where we could attend, but oftentimes we were working with groups while the grade level teachers had planning and vice versa, so that the students were always in instruction of one kind or another. And we worked with multiple grade levels. So if we went to every grade level planning meeting, there would be no time left to teach. So I know you can relate to all of that. So what happened, more than I would like to admit, is what we termed doorknob planning, which is just like our friend here in the picture. As you walk up to the classroom you're about to push into, you hold the doorknob and you say, what did we do yesterday? What were they working on? And as you open the door, you listen for keywords. As you walk in, you scan the room for objectives or any sign that can tell you what's going on without you interrupting. And you say, okay, good. Fractions today, looks like we're comparing. Let me listen for a minute. And within 2-3 minutes, you have to figure out what's going on, what language, and dive on in there so that you can do your job and be supportive to the content teacher and help the students who are in front of you. Not the best method of planning. right? Though, I will say, if you become a functional language planning expert, as we discussed in blog 2, your doorknob planning occasions, when it's something that was unavoidable, and it happens sometimes, if you know the routines and the ingredients to functional language planning and what matters, then if you are put in a situation of doorknob planning, it will be much, much better planning, much more targeted, much more explicit, and you will know, go down your list of checkpoints of these are the most important things I have to look for right now, and I know what I need to do. So while I don't recommend doorknob planning, and as I said, recommend the demise of doorknob planning, the reality is that if you are in that situation ever, being a functional language planning expert will support you in providing much better instruction in any situation. Because through this process, we simplify and routinize planning. There's so many things you could teach when you teach language. It's like stepping up to the giant buffet and trying to prioritize what you're going to put on your plate because you can't take it all, right? Or you can't fit it all in your stomach, so you have to prioritize, right? Our students can't digest all of it. We can't get it all in. So what is most important, and how do we pick those pieces out and come up with a system where we know exactly what to look for every time, and we know exactly what our language menu is to pick from, and we make the best match and we move on quickly. And when we follow a simple planning routine like that, then our content teacher and our ELD teacher get on the same page quickly and easily so that you can wrap that up and move on to plan with the next person or for the next event or day or lesson. Remember, as we said in the last blog, we're focusing on teaching to a purpose, which involves teaching to a language standard, teaching to a language outcome. We must have a purpose for using that language. We're not just going to teach adjectives because it's on our list of things to do, right? We are going to teach what students need today to accomplish what they need to accomplish. In the last blog, we talked about this example about how do people adapt to new experiences and make a new place a home, right? That's a scenario we were planning for in a collaborative planning session. And we talked about how we can split the content teacher and ELD teacher roles. Just brought this slide back up to refresh your memory. If you missed blog 2 and you want more details about how this broke down, go ahead back to blog 2 and review. So here's a little bit about taking blog 2 and moving forward. I wanted to find a visual to go with this. In blog 2, I spoke to the point of ELD teachers saying they can't teach ELD standards or the ELD curriculum because they're helping students finish their content assignments, or they are may or may not be reading intervention, officially reading intervention, but leaning that way of trying to continue to reinforce letters and letter sounds and phonemic awareness and the blends and the vowel patterns and all of this because students are struggling to master that. And so the EL teacher is asked to participate in that as well. And when I think of that scenario, it sounds like wonderful collaboration, but what we're missing is what I wanted to try to illustrate with this picture here. We're all trying to grow the same tree, right? We're all trying to grow that student. And if we're all trying to grow the student in the exact same way, this is the equivalent, right? One person has the watering can and is giving students the information that they need to grow. Then it's kind of tag team. When the person with the blue shoes is done watering, then they pass the watering can to the person with the purple shoes, and now the person with the purple shoes takes the watering can and gives the same information, the same kind of instruction to the student to grow the student. If everyone in this scenario is giving water to grow this tree, if everyone in this scenario is teaching the same thing the same way, then the tree is only going to develop so much, right? The tree needs a lot more. The tree needs different approaches. Sometimes the tree needs rain. The tree needs sun. The tree needs soil, right? We have to look at the big picture and take our students into consideration, where if we're all delivering the same message, then we're spending more time and more time and more time on something that's not working for that student, or they wouldn't be considered for intervention in the first place. And I know we get in that situation often because we don't know what else to do, right? When you don't know, you don't know. You do the best you can do with the information you have. What we want to create with this content teacher and ELD teacher partnership is where, when we go to plant this tree, that everyone comes to the table with different tools and different perspectives, right? Someone brings the student. So think of the woman holding the tree. Here's the parent bringing you the student. One teacher's coming with the shovel. I have content area curriculum. I'm going to contribute. Then there's a teacher with the trowel, right? The hand shovel. I'm going to introduce you to the same ideas, maybe through the arts. And then the person with the, I should have looked up what that was called, the little mini rake there. Here's our language person who's saying, oh, well, we also need a little bit of this. And everyone brings their expertise to the table. That tree is going to grow because it's getting all of the pieces that it needs instead of a lot of one piece. Does this analogy make sense? So what does that look like in the classroom? That one example of what we're working on in a school that I am working with. They found that that data was not moving when everyone was teaming up to reinforce the foundational skills, depending on the student, right? Not everyone was privy to the data that led to putting the student in that group. Not everyone was privy to the formative assessment, the progress monitoring data. So then you're like throwing arrows, throwing darts in the dark, right? Shooting at a moving target. You don't know what target you're looking for. You're teaching skills that they may or may not need. We need to get very targeted and explicit. And we do that through good communication and by boiling down what that student needs into high impact key pieces of language instruction that support what the content teacher is trying to do. So typically, not in all cases, but typically, English learners, multilingual students, second language literacy learners learn more by making meaning than they do by breaking down foundational skills and trying to build up. So in traditional instruction, we work on kind of a pyramid form where we start with the little skills, right? I teach you letters, I teach you sounds, I teach you how to the vowels and the different ways they go, then blends, and then putting them together, the CVC, and then bigger words, and right, and then it goes and works up. What research shows works better for second language literacy learners is an approach like this, where we start with the big picture, with meaning. When students have a message that they want to communicate, a message that they care about, something they want to say, something they want to write, and then we work through writing that down with them, for them, together, and then we can break their message down into those parts and teach those parts. So what's missing is all the meaning. We're going through months of school with those literacy pieces not having any meaning wrapped around them. So what we're working on, instead of adding additional phonemic awareness support, or instead of, can you keep on teaching this same thing, like I talked about in blog 2, until they get it, of how about the teacher with the shovel goes about it this way, and the teacher with the little rake goes about it this way, and together it's bound to click if we're coming at it from different approaches, right? So we need someone in the room focused explicitly on the language that students need today, right now, in this classroom, right? Even for math, not just the literacy approach, right? So someone's coming in with the shovel, the math teacher, she has all the math knowledge, teaching the math standards, teaching the operations, teaching the step-by-steps, teaching the reasoning and the thinking. And our language teacher should not be teaching the math. The language teacher should be teaching students how to talk about math, how to share their ideas, how to explain what they're thinking, how to explain what's happening in that classroom. And in order to do that, there's very particular language that students need. And through functional language planning, we can look at that scenario and quickly pinpoint and target our language goals. And we have our language development happening, we have our math development happening, and that's when the student is going to grow. So that planning looks a little bit different, and we have to stay targeted and focused so we don't go down this slippery slope where then we're suddenly all teaching the language arts standards, or we're suddenly all teaching the math standard and nobody taught the language, right? That's what's happening in a lot of places, and it's unintentional because we're trying to figure it out, but there are ways to go about making it much more explicit. So functional language planning requires that you develop a planning tool, a planning guide that targets specific pieces of language so that you know what's going to give you the most impact, right? Where's the biggest bang for the buck? What do students need today to communicate this? And we are going to work on developing the language we need, the functional language, right? The language we need to function. There are key pieces, right? We plan so many things that make so little impact. So let's work together to talk about what are the key pieces that make a big impact and focus our attention there. It will, like we said, simplify planning, routinize planning, make it more efficient and more effective. There's no one organizer way to do it. There's lots of ways that you can organize your thinking, but the big ideas are the big ideas. And functional language planning, becoming a functional language planning expert, is what you need to get you to really zero in on what matters in every lesson. So you can still teach all of these, you can still teach all of the language features. You can still teach grammar if that's what you love. You can still teach verb tenses and noun groups and saying verbs and temporal language. You will still teach all the same things as the English language development person, but you will teach it when the student needs it, because that's when it will stay. Because they have a reason, it makes sense, it has meaning, and it will stick with them. It will also give them more success in the content area because they have the language they need to communicate their thinking and to clarify when they don't understand. So I hope you see the mindset shift that we're still going to teach all the English language development things that you love to teach. It's just not going to follow that artificial scope and sequence. It's going to follow a scope and sequence that matches what students need to function in their classroom. So I've said this probably a dozen or more times by now by blog 3, but becoming a functional language planning expert is the transformation you need to reach new heights in flexibility, efficiency, effectiveness, targeted instruction, explicit instruction, and get rid of the fluff that's not making a difference. Again, I ask you to share with me what's going on in your mind, what mindset shifts are happening, what questions do you have, what's been most valuable? I'd love to hear. If you missed part 1 and part 2, you can go ahead back to those and stay tuned for part 4.